Change management basically has everything to do with architecture. And one thing is, in order to create a complex object, and we're standing in the American Institute of Architects. There's a lot of architectural examples around us right now. In fact, this model right beside me is an example or a model of a building. Well, in order to build a building, even at the era in which this building would have been built, which, a lot of years ago now, somebody, the architect, would have defined this at excruciating level of detail. They could never have produced a complex object like this without the architecture. In fact, this is a relatively simple building, but compared to what the kind of buildings are we would build today, but yet. This architecture was defined excruciating level of detail. They weren't just starting with a handful of axes and a bunch of trees and chopping down trees to see what they could do. So the architecture is instrumental in producing the product to begin with. And then once you produce the product, in this case a building, the architecture is the baseline for changing the object or product in the building. If you want to change this building, and you don't have any architectural representations, any design artifacts, well, you can change it by trial and error. Just move a few of those pillars around, see what happens. And the high probability is you'd lose, the front portion of that building. That's high risk. If you start changing things, you don't know what the impacts of the changes are. So you can change it by trial and error, but that's high risk. Second thing, if an architect was going to change it, they'd be in here with drills and tape measures and trying to recreate the architectural constructs before they'll ever touch this building. And they'll do research. They'll try to find pictures of it being built in the newspapers. That takes time and costs money. They will reverse engineer from the standing edifice the object that's been created, the standing edifice in this case, recreate the drawings, the functional specs, the bills of material before they start to change it. The third option is, if you don't have architecture, well, tear this thing down and start over again. Just scrap the whole thing. It's exceeded its useful life. So you can start from scratch. But if you don't have architecture and you want to change something, a complex object, those are your three options. Change it by trial and error, high risk, reverse engineer the architectural constructs. That takes time and costs money. Or the third option is just tear the thing down, start over again, replace it with something different. And from an enterprise standpoint, the same thing applies. The enterprise is so complex. The enterprises these days are the most complex object known to mankind. We basically are kind of winging it, and over time we have to begin to get expressive to explain how it works so it can work effectively. You have to have architecture. Then if you want to change that enterprise, if you don't have architecture, you have three possibilities. You can change it by trial and error. You can reverse engineer the as-is models from the existing enterprise, which takes time and costs money. Or the third option is just let the thing go obsolete, create a new enterprise. Let this one go out of business.